You're listening to Lights Camera Latino, the podcast, hosted by Angel Fabian Rivera. Remember to follow us on our social media platforms as Lights Camera Latino and Angel Fabian Rivera. Hola mi gente, welcome to Lights Camera Latino, the podcast. This is a place where we dive deep into the captivating world of entertainment with influential Latinos shaping the industry. As always, I am Angel Fabian Rivera and I'm so excited to get back here for another episode. Remember to follow us in Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere as Lights Camera Latino. And I want to shout out Latina AF. If you haven't checked our new store, it's latinaaf.com. Make sure to check our products for artists, Latinos out there, and creators. This is for you. Okay. So today on Lights Camera Latino, we're joined by Marco Medina, the founder of Lumexx Media, a film distribution company dedicated to amplifying diverse voices and bringing Latino stories to wider audiences. Marco has been at the forefront of helping filmmakers navigate the often overlooked world of distribution, making sure that powerful projects actually reach the screens and audiences they deserve. We're excited to dive into his journey, his insights on the business side of film, and his vision for the future of Latino representation in media. Welcome, Marco.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you. That was a great speech, great intro. Let's see what we actually get into today, because there's a lot in entertainment or in distribution, I would say.
Right. I'm so excited to dive deep into this because there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot happening, and there's a lot that people don't necessarily understand about this side of the industry, which is, it's scary sometimes as a filmmaker to really dig deep into it. So we're gonna make sure to talk about that. But before we get there, Marco, I want to talk about your heritage. Where are you from? What's your family from?
Mexicano de Michoacán, Morelia, to be exact.
Yeah, and you were born and raised here in Georgia?
In Atlanta. Yeah, I've been here pretty much all my life.
Wow. Do you still have family in Mexico?
Yeah, and actually a lot of our partners have bigger companies in Mexico. So it's very interesting to see how entertainment delays. I think the U.S. market still leads, but it's definitely a conversation of continuing to grow the team back home in Morelia, Mexico.
Oh, I love that. What was your thing that sparked, or what film sparked your interest in getting into this industry? Like, what sparked in you?
I don't know if it was a film. I think the like if it was a scene in a film. I think I was at a conference with one of my mentors, and the way he said, this is show business. You need the business and you need the show, really stuck with me. I think at the time we were pitching like an independent project that I thought was amazing, but I knew little to nothing about the business side of things. And it really made me like, that is a complete sentence, right? Show business, right? You can't, business, yeah. If you just, you do one or the other, I think you get a little stuck. So I think that was the moment and I was like, okay, I was looking at this wrong. To really be a player in this, you got to look at the full sentence and you got to define which part you want to focus on a little bit more.
Wow. Yeah. So with that, what inspired you to create Lumexx Media, and what gap in the industry you were hoping to fill when you created this?
I think that story is a little bit more direct than it is fun. I think being in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, we were selling a lot of urban content, just where we were. And it was a lot of cable content and it was a lot of international sales. Then the pandemic happened. And like with anything, when the pandemic happened, you started seeing streaming platforms, Amazon, Roku, Tubi, etc. And you started seeing the en español section, insert platform en español. And that's kind of it. At the time, I was already distributing other content here in Atlanta locally. And then when streaming happened, it was a conversation of, I saw the gap, right? Tubi en español, Roku en español, and ViX was already a big player in that area. But you could see that there was a big demand for our audience And at that point, the platform was already needy. They needed it. They needed to have that content to feed that audience. And they were like, hey, can you give me some Spanish content?
Mm. And it is crazy because I've been seeing the percentages and the numbers, and it said that the Latinos are the first moviegoers, right? And I think we're still there. So the content was always needed. It's just that a lot of companies didn't know. That I I think they didn't know where to look for that content, right? Or they were not creating that content.
Yeah, I think that speaks a bigger truth to like what is going on in the industry as a whole.
Mm,
I mean, you mentioned theaters, and I think theaters have their own variable. Um, I think platforms have their own metrics
mm,
or variable as well. I think um, consumers as a whole have defined that lane better, right? I think
mm,
historically with cable, we didn't have data. I think now when you sign up for an account, it's annoying, but the first thing they do when you buy a new TV or a new iPhone or a new Roku or Fire TV is they get that information from you. What's your name?
mm.
What area are you in? Are you Latino? Or what's your age group? And that's very overwhelming as a consumer. I hate it, but from a business point of view, it allows you to trust the data a little bit more because you're like,
Mm.
oh, it's right there in front of you.
Yes, and so those are the metrics these platforms are using to understand what content we should make, what content we should bring. That's very interesting. Do you work like with streaming platforms like that, and like do they come to you, for example, and they say we need more Latino content, we need more of this, or these are the numbers, or how does that work from your perspective?
I think the numbers are the hardest thing. I think every platform has their own numbers, and
Mhm.
I can only see what my content can do. Right. I think when we have strategy meetings, they can tell us what they're looking for, and they can't necessarily confirm why they're looking for that. But
Mm.
we both know that we're in a metrics world now. Right? It's algorithm this, algorithm that. So if they're asking for something, it's not because it's coming out of thin air. It's because they've done some research into their own platform, their own audience, and probably it's not a risk anymore if they're
Yeah.
calculating who's actually looking for it. For us, those are the rooms that we want to be in
Mhm.
directly with them, with as many platforms as possible, because they're all different. No platform's the same, different audience. Amazon looks completely different than Netflix. Netflix
Mm.
looks completely different than VIX. VIX looks completely different than Pluto. And I could keep going. So it's a lot. And each of them have their
Yes.
own algorithm for them to fill the Latino audience.
Mm. Wow. And have you seen any changes, like specifically after the pandemic, right? You mentioned that the pandemic, and streaming platforms are growing and growing. Have you seen any changes from your perspective?
I mean, the same pinpoints that I think that creators are saying is that nothing makes sense right now.
Mm,
The
mm,
changes
mm,
are so quick, are so fast. From a corporate level, different companies are buying different companies. For example, the newest one with like Disney and Hulu and
mhm.
HBO now being under the same umbrella. Where as a distributor, who do I sell the movie to?
Yeah, that was crazy for me. By the way, that was crazy. I just found out the other day because I was getting a deal with Disney, and they were like, "Oh, you want to bundle HBO Max with you too?" And I was like, "Why? What's happening?" Like, I didn't know that was a thing. And now, from your perspective, right? Like, how do you work that then? Do you go to HBO or do you go to Disney?
You navigate, right? You navigate. I think if you could take anything from me right now is that there's a lot of volatility going on in the market and a lot of industries with different
Mm,
bubbles. And I think if you want to have the Atlanta saying, you hustle it. You hustle to the opportunity to
mm,
figure out who was my deal with and who's my point of contact. Are they're not there no more? Okay, great. Who's next? And you navigate all of that because you can't give up, because then the deal's dead and it's dead because of
mm.
you. You don't want that. You want
Gotcha.
it to be
Mm,
dead, put it on them. But
mm,
it's a lot of stressful points, right? I think one of the things that I heard the other day that really sat with me was like a reverse waterfall effect, right? Before you go and you get one deal, let's say with
mhm.
NBC or ABC, and that's it. You've made it. You got that
That's
one
it.
deal, they're going to
Mm,
do everything else. What I'm seeing a lot these days is that it's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of that hustle. It's
mm,
a little bit of that LinkedIn. It's a little bit of that talking to one platform, but also to another platform, doing great podcasts
mm,
to get people engaged. maybe you're doing your own thing, but also you're part of a bigger project. All of that is now useful to get that
Yeah.
bigger deal to finish line, right? Because if you do one thing, it's hard.
Wow, that is crazy, and also like adding to that and adding, I think, to the stress is that also every platform uh, has their own style, right? It has their own
Yes.
specific like way
Yes.
of telling their stories and showcasing their films. So not every film is going to be for every platform as well. So that's also what they need and what they're looking for. Maybe your film, HBO is not looking for it right now, but maybe Hulu is looking for something like that. So that's the way that also you have to navigate like that, which must not be easy.
Yeah, and it changes. Hey, 6 months from now, what we were looking for now, it's gone, right? Like we're now entering the fourth quarter. So for us, technically, the rest of the year is already planned. Now is conversations for next year.
For
Because
next year.
unless, yeah, I mean, even if you're like an A-list celebrity right now, you have to make some mountains moves because the programming department already programmed the rest of the year.
Yeah,
So in 6 months, we'll see. It'll be different from now.
that is crazy. That is yeah. I mean, it's a little stressful too because you have to like stay updated and stay in touch. I believe like you have to stay like grounded and see what's happening and see the changes and make sure that when they're being open again and you can. It's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's also like anything. Like it's a lost leader. Just because they have
Mm,
their goal doesn't mean that should be your goal, right? Like you could still
mhm,
have your metrics, your point of view. I do give people the homework of like figure out what three platforms you really, really want to be on, and
mm.
maybe do those some business research on what those deals will look like, and then like any investment, what's the worst that could happen? And then just think about
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, yeah. What's the worst that can happen? They can tell you no, and that's it. You move on to the next one. You continue. Uh, Marco, for the filmmakers who may not know much about distribution, can
Mhm.
you can you break down from your perspective what happens after a film is completed and how and when Lumexx steps in, for example?
So distribution as a whole, you should always be thinking about it as a filmmaker. Normally, when a product is finished, and that's what Lumix says as well, we can actually get a little bit more active. We can start doing the research based on the cast, the budget, the genre, figuring out where the market is, having these conversations with the filmmaker that we're having here today. But it would help if you think about that from the very beginning, right? Or when you're shooting
Mm,
your product or things like that. Because what is distribution? Is it theatrical sales? Is it streaming? Is it DVD
mm,
sales? Is it actually like, is if it's a live sport, do you actually have a live action side to it? Like, can people go and buy tickets
mm,
and see you? Are you doing anything else that's creative outside of the box that people can actually enter your universe, is what I call
mm.
it? Because you're building an IP realistically, you're building your intellectual property. So, what does that mean for your world? And what does it mean in this world? And I think that's where it gets a little bit lost because distribution is all of that, right? If
Mm.
we could have taught about theatrical sales from the beginning, that would have been really good to think about because then you could have gone into creative based on your genre. Maybe you only target certain cities, maybe you only target certain audiences, age groups. We saw a lot of that post pandemic when a lot of independent films were able to go into different theaters because the theaters needed films.
Needed, yes.
So that's a thought. Then you look at, renting and buying films. A lot of the times, the TVOD play, which is where the consumer rents or buys a product before it goes to a streamer, that still makes a good amount of money.
It does. I mean, from my perspective as an actor, I from my residuals, I've seen the money that it's making. That's the money I'm making. So I imagine the money that it's making as a fullest, and it's like you said, like people take that for granted, and they shouldn't.
Yeah, and I mean distribution as a whole. To answer your question directly, Lumexx gets involved when a project is a little bit more finished, and we can actually distribute it. Which currently the landscape looks like streaming platform.
Mm,
Traditionally, you still had your theatrical sales, your cable sales, and we're still seeing a little bit more international sales, but
oh,
nothing makes sense right now, right? Like that is the point that there is no one size fits all. Like what we're talking about right now, it's very
mm,
vague. When we can get niche into what the film is, we can get very direct on based on the market what we should do. But distribution as a whole, a filmmaker should always be thinking about it, whether they talk to Lumexx or to a different distributor, because it's the same conversations, right?
Mm.
Where is your product going to live? How is the audience going to engage with it? And what do you need to do to make sure it gets to the finish line?
Okay. And that also includes a little bit of the marketing aspect, if I'm not mistaken, right? Because when you distribute, you also think about, okay, how are we going to move this film as well, right? And are you also part of that process?
We're trying to engage a little bit more with that, because what we've been seeing is that a lot of people also want YouTube and meta rights for films,
Mm,
specifically for reels and shorts.
mm,
And it is not a direct answer to your question as far as marketing, because I think marketing as a whole, much like our industry, is going through a lot of changes right now. And with the same thought process that everything is being tracked in analytics,
mm.
Google and Facebook and Instagram have the best analytics.
Yep. Yep.
And we're kind of, I'm not saying being forced to do a lot more marketing, but it's very hard to avoid now,
To avoid
right?
it, yeah.
Because look at TikTok. TikTok has been one of the biggest growths from any platform, I would say, in recent years, but also specifically when it comes to movies, they've also introduced their own kind of IMDb section. I don't know if you've seen it, but if you scroll and there's a trailer playing for a film, you can click on it and TikTok tells you where to watch it.
It's crazy.
It's
So
very ingenious.
it's
Yeah.
like, but it's like you said, like you cannot avoid it, and that's the thing that people and filmmakers, actors also forget sometimes. Like, yes, it is there for a reason as well, and it is useful. It's gonna be a really good tool for your project or whatever you're doing in the moment.
And much to like the conversation that we're having right now, you have to do it all. I think Lumexx is trying to do its best, but it's still a small company trying to grow in this new space and realistically trying to keep up. I think any other distributor is also trying to do that with their 5,000 films that they have under their catalog. And it's like, how do we market all of these? Where do we market all of these? Which ones get marketed
Yes.
and which ones don't, right? So you as a filmmaker, if your film's already placed somewhere, marketing should not be a one-sided conversation. I
No.
think if you still want to see your product successful, you should do your own marketing, because then you can at least have some say in what you think, what works and what you doesn't know work.
Exactly. Yeah. No. I see a lot of specifically independent filmmaking that they're doing right now is, they do these videos on TikTok or Instagram, introducing who they are as creators, or introduce the actors, or talk about why they're making the film, and that also adds a little bit of more. You can see their faces and you can trust them and feel like, okay, I want to watch a movie. Where do I watch it now? And that way, where it comes in.
Yeah, one of the examples that I use a lot when letting this click with people is whatever's recent. And the most recent one that comes to mind is Lilo and Stitch, and how Disney promoted Stitch. I saw Stitch doing interviews with IGN Gaming. I
It was
saw
crazy.
Stitch did a great Super Bowl commercial on Tubi. People thought it was real. I saw they just get so creative where Stitch enters the Disney universe, but also doesn't really promote you like an ad, right? It's just kind of there, but it's entering different ecosystems that Disney can, put them in. And obviously, we're not going to sit here and say that it's not like those aren't contractual and they knew they were going to do that for months. They have a whole team dedicated to it. But a micro level, what could you do with your reach, with your audience, that maybe has a similar effect? Because now that people are getting marketed that way, you kind of have to start thinking that way too. Because I would argue that was successful marketing. I went and saw Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, I saw it everywhere. And now in Disney Plus, when you open the platform, you see Stitch coming up. So that's another way of like putting it out there, but without telling you, oh, we are in Disney Plus. The movie's already here in the platform, but you see Stitch coming in. So it's another way of indirectly telling you, watch the movie. And that's it. I think that's a question that every filmmaker needs to ask themselves too, before they go through this process, because those are things that we forget sometimes. We want to create this amazing film, but then we don't think about, what do I want to do with it? Where do I want to put it at? Do I have, do I have a chance? you have to think about these things before. And I always say, because yes, you're entering into this new world, and there's a lot of projects, films, series out there that they're competing with you, and you
Yeah.
have to put yourself in front.
Or separate yourself. I think in front is
Exactly.
hard. So like I think a lot of the question that we get right away is who's in it, what's the budget, what's the genre, and
Mm,
then where do I go from there, right? Because
mm,
like if I have basic answers with those and I can't necessarily do anything with it,
mm.
sell me on it, because that's what I have to do. I
Exactly.
have to sell them on it.
Yeah.
Well, hey, not the biggest budget, but we have a good cast because we were able to
Hmm.
negotiate some things. And, the genre is really good. Like this genre could have done really well. And I've seen that it does well for you guys. So maybe that's easier soft pitch for you guys to look at. You have to really consider the business side of it. Going back to show
Yeah.
business, the show's
That's
done.
right.
If the show's done, or you're in the beginning, or you're in the concept, where's the business side of it? And
Mm,
here's the thing: most films take a while to recoup, right? I
mm,
think that's the hard truth, especially with how volatile this industry is right now. It's a long tail. I mean, it's going to take time. So you really have to live with the project as much as you can when you can. Because by the time you move on to
mm,
the next project, I need assets. I need good technical, raw footage, artwork, marketing campaigns, so that in 3, 6, or 9 months, or 3 years from now, we can still market the product, because now maybe one of those actors took off and he's in a
mm.
different film, and people are going to come back and watch your film because he was in it.
Because it was, yeah. Ooh, those are very good examples, and ways of, like, yes, you have to think about the long ride. Yeah. Think about, not only today but tomorrow. You have to have those thoughts with you all the time, and that's the thing that people really need to get better into it, because we forget. We think about, I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm not a big studio. My film doesn't have it, and it's not that. It's more to that. Uh, Question: do you get sometimes, in projects in pre-production, in the pre-production, do they come to you as well,
Mhm.
and talk about it? And do you have this conversation of exchanges, of like, I think, or we think you should do this in order to get to this point? Do you have those conversations, and that's a thing that you do with them?
Yes, and I would like to better define that. I think
Mm,
that is something that I would want to continue to do, because, for example, when I pitch to a platform, one of the questions that I ask them: if I don't have what you need, what do you want? And can I put you
mm,
in connection to someone to talk to? But then in the same breath, um, that's not a business section that has been developed for Lumexx
mm,
yet, right? As far as like consulting or sales, because
uh-huh,
if you expand on that thought, it's a lot on the line with, like, let's say a production company that you haven't necessarily worked with, right? And I think with all the companies that have gotten to me in the pre-production phase, I think I do my best to give my honest opinion, and
mhm,
or connect them with somebody that I think would help. I don't want to say like no fee, but like there's no like hesitation in my mind, because that's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm
yeah.
focused on. I'm not seeing a big market right there right now. So that connection, it just makes sense for me to go ahead and do that connection, and let's call it good karma. Hopefully it comes back. Because if there's nothing I can do for your product, there's nothing I can do for your product. And if somebody can
Exactly.
help you push it forward, you guys should go and have a little thinking session or a little meeting by yourself, and then come back and see what we can do. But from a distributor point of view, I think even like last week, I had a conversation about this project was already mostly funded, and they wanted me to do pre-sales internationally. And I'm not seeing a lot of pre-sales internationally, not
Mm,
like I used to. So I said
wow.
that during the call, and I'm like, this is my opinion. It's still your project. You still have all the control in the world to do what you decide. But I would say that currently pre-sales are a little bit harder than they used to be. So you need to stand out a little bit more. So yes, to your question, I don't mind working with pre-production. I don't mind talking to anybody that's in the production phase. I call that my parking lot, because I may not have
Mm,
something immediate for them, but I want to come back to you if one of these platforms say, "Hey, we're looking for
yeah.
that genre or that cast," and you come to mind. I want to be ready to connect that.
Gotcha, gotcha. I wanna step back a second, because you mentioned the pre-sale international. Can you share what that is? Like, What's because I heard about that the other day, working with someone in a project that they were talking about that, and I didn't understand what it was, but now I know. Can you share a little bit about what pre-sale international means?
I may butcher it word by words, and I will add that if you go to my LinkedIn, Marco Medina, there's another gentleman who wrote up a great like blog post about it, so you can full like a full detail dive. But at its essence, it's basically mean the bankability of either a cast or a genre in other foreign territories, right? So internationally, and using the estimate bankability of how much that film is going to bring in, so that that
Mm,
territory can be like, hey, I want to give you X amount for those rights in this territory. So then you can take that back, even though the project's not done, and it's considered a pre-sale because you committed to
mm,
giving that territory the film for those theaters for X amount. You've negotiated the whole deal. It's just that the film's not
negotiate.
done.
Yeah.
But you have, think about it like if you were a physical product, you have a shipping order, you
Hmm.
have a buyer ready to go, and it's either liquid, meaning they did pay some money up front to get you there, or it's not liquid. It's an actual letter with the contract. But that contract you can take to the bank and show them that you have a buyer for the film, which then it's a sale.
Wow. Well, that requires a lot of numbers.
Mm.
But yeah, but it's something that to take in mind that people think again like these things are easy. They're not. You're doing all these pre-sale internationals like way before the movie is already taken by someone. So all these things are happening behind the scenes, and I know it's hard because you're getting in contact with all these territories, different theaters, different places, and see how well your film will be there,
Mhm.
even though it's not made or it's not ready, but just by the cast and by genre, so so you basically get in there and see what people are looking for and see how much that type of thing will make there, how much money will make there. That is crazy.
It's
But it's beautiful,
analytics. It's the same thing that we were saying, right? Like horror is a great example because that translates into Mexicans love horror,
Really,
Argentina loves horror, different parts of Europe loves horror. It just translates.
it
And
just
if you look
translates
at
very easily.
if you even like, that's another homework that I can give people. You can go to IMDb and IMDb Pro and look at when a film says gross sales,
Mm,
figure out where those international gross sales were.
mm,
Because if you're doing a comparable for your film, it's kind of again not apples to apples comparisons, but it's a lost leader to figure out, hey, my film is very similar to that, and it did really
mm.
well in that territory. Maybe I should look into that territory.
Wow, there it is. Yes, that's a homework for filmmakers to do. That is a very good thing. So why IMDb exists, there's many numbers in there too. We just ignore it and continue, looking for other things. But yeah, pay more attention to that. Uh, oh, Marco, when you consider acquiring a project, right, with Lumexx, what are the key factors you look for?
I mean, like I mentioned, like cast, genre, are very important. Budget's very important so that we can figure out how you're seeing the market.
Mhm.
Understanding where you want the product to be and see if we can or can't get you there. Having a very transparent and realistic conversation up front. Um, One of the big things that we've been looking for is we want to focus on as much Latin content as we can. And what that actually means, different territory, different language, different messages, also like marketability, like what platform is it going to be on? Are we going for a licensing
Mm,
deal so that the platform's going to pay us up front, or are we going for an AVOD deal where like the performance of the film is going to pay us? So we look at all
uh,
of those different variables, and we I want to say we push, but we do want to have that conversation up front. And oh, and one thing that I did,
mm,
elephant in the room, that I don't know why I didn't say it earlier, technical deliverables, metadata, cue points,
mm,
artwork, cue sheets, music cue sheets, contracts. Because a lot of times if a filmmaker comes to me and says, hi, hey, I want Netflix, and I show them Netflix technical specs, it's very easy to not blame me. At that point, it's away
mm,
from me. It's like you didn't meet the Netflix tech sheets. So
mm.
that's one of the things that I do too. Whenever somebody is either about to finish a product or we're continuing to have that distribution conversation, I give a deliverable sheet before we talk about the contract, before we talk about, what platform you want to be on. These are the deliverables that I need. And if I don't have these deliverables, I can't really
Yeah.
do my job.
Mm.
So deliverables are very important, but then right next to it, equally important, budget, cast, crew, and understanding where you're at with the product.
Yeah, and these things again, every filmmaker, every producer should start preparing it in the pre-production, process. Don't forget about that because then you're gonna go to post-production and then you're gonna be like, oh wait, I still don't have any of this, and I have to. So these things and these conversations, I'd say they need to start happening before you even, shoot your camera because you have to know that you're not doing this just for fun, because that's the thing we need to think of. We have to have that business side of it, of us in us. And as artists and creators, sometimes it's hard to understand that there's a business side of it. But if you don't do the business, then your movie's not gonna get anywhere. And
Yeah,
again, it's gonna come back to you.
and one simple way, especially being Latino, is dubbing. Like, think about stem
Ooh.
files. Si la película está en español, can it be in English? If it's in English,
Mm,
puede estar en español? Because now you just went from the
yeah.
US to maybe the whole Americas or South America, and then maybe Spain, and then maybe it does better somewhere else. Dubbing is such a big possibility, right? It's not guaranteed, but it just gives your product so much life.
Ooh, yeah, no, thinking about, for example, Squid Game, right? Squid Game, first time I
That's a
saw
great
it,
example.
it had it English, right? Dubbing. I always prefer to watch it in the original language and put the subtitles, but for that show, I was like, I want to watch it with the dubbing and see how it goes. But I think that's a great example of a project that really came to America in a way, that was easier because people could just watch it in English.
Yeah, and I think Squid Games is the most immediate one. I mean, if you do some research on that, you just look at how that came to be and like the Netflix deal. I think you can learn a lot about that one. I would argue even Dragon Ball Z from the beginning.
Mm,
Mexicans love Dragon Ball Z.
I love Dragon Ball Z. We watch Dragon Ball Z in Puerto Rico in Spanish as
Exactly.
well.
And the dubbing, it's better because then I heard it in English and I'm like, it's not the same. It's not the same. So it's been happening for years, right? And uh, I'm a bit of a car fanatic too, and there's like other programs like Initial D that it gets dubbed in certain things. And I don't know if what's it called, Funimation, or the animation place where you can watch anime content.
Oh, I don't watch that many anime, but I know what you're talking about.
There was a platform where you can watch
Mm.
content there, but yeah, once like again, let's say Dragon Ball's rights expire to be on a certain platform in a certain territory, that could be different if the dub version gets a different contract.
So this also like if your project is dubbed, it's a different contract.
Different contract, different market. I don't know if
Wow.
I don't even know if I want to say this, but I think Dragon Ball went into Latin America first because the Spanish dub got clear. I could be wrong, but
Wow.
I would do some research into that.
Wow. That is crazy. And thinking about I'm thinking about older shows that I grew up like Power Rangers, for example. Power Rangers
Yeah.
was a show that was not made here, and all those the villain, the lady, I forgot her name. It was in her original language and they were just dubbing it. They never used another actress for that, which is crazy for me. Like they reused that and they just dubbed it.
Yeah, once you start looking at all the details, it's a lot of content like that.
I love that. I love the craziness of the what film and TV shows can do. Like I grew up watching a lot of Disney shows, for example, in
Hmm.
Spanish, right? But also it was a gate for us, to be able to watch these shows. And again, they were being smart because they were opening the doors for more people to watch the content without having to make a different story or a different show.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the point, right? At the end of the day, you want to consume content and you want to find your audience wherever you find your audience. Going back
Mm.
to Squid Games, I think locally it didn't really found. I mean, it's hard to compare, but I would argue it didn't find its audience as big as it found it internationally with
Mm.
Netflix.
Yep, and now they're using their IP, which again I think there has to be something about the contract because they're using the IP. They were even talking about doing an American version of it, like following it up. So
Yeah, I don't know that one. I'm pretty sure Netflix had negotiated the rights for it from the beginning. I
Mm,
wouldn't be surprised if they have. I think legally they can. But it still teaches you that, if somebody offers you an opportunity, you don't know where it's going to go. So definitely make sure you're comfortable with what you're signing and the possibilities that you don't know are possible and that are possible, right? Because if you know
hmm.
something's going to do well and you still want to sign, it's okay. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Netflix. There are a lot of people on Netflix.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. And it's still the biggest one, right? Netflix is still the biggest platform as for now.
Define biggest.
Like the biggest, like the more where audiences watch more content. Like, does it attract more audiences than other platforms still?
So look at Nielsen reports, which supposedly tracks data. Nielsen reports claims that YouTube is actually one of the biggest audience.
Wow.
But to your question, if we're defining like a streamer traditionally like that, which I think YouTube is not, I would say yes, it
Mm,
is Netflix because I mean they were first to market. I
mm.
would say internationally, I don't care if it's here, the UK, Australia, Mexico, or Brazil, it's all about Netflix.
It's
It's
all on
all about
Netflix.
Netflix. I think they barely have like Tubi, Roku, or some of the streaming services that we're seeing here. Netflix and Disney internationally are winning.
Are winning. Wow, that is wow. Ah, Blockbuster didn't get it, and now they went solo. Marco, why is Latino representation in film and media so important to you, and how have you seen it evolve recently?
Oof, let's tread lightly here. I think it's in the new stages, right? I think that I mean, we talked about like the data reports. The audience is very hard to ignore from any aspect, financially, economically. It's the stories that need to be told, how we're being
Mm,
defined and in different buckets. I think this is all new for everybody. I think that's fun. I think that's realistically at a micro level, that's fun. We don't know what this turns into, right? So I think
mm,
that as a Latin distributor, I want to be able to voice up different voices. I don't know
mm.
what that looks like. Is it an immigration story? Is it a single mother story? Or is it something fun? Like, give me something fun. I think we need to better define what the audience likes. But I do think, I mean, the Latin audience is just going to continue to grow. I think
Mm.
every report that says where we're going to be in 2029 is different than where we're at
Oh, yeah.
today. And I think it's just harder to ignore. And I think I just want to be in this space and that's it, right? I think I want to be in
Yeah.
front of the line, like you said, but in the very least, I want to be part of the room. I think there's going to be a lot of creators that are coming up that are Latino. I think, I mean, it's already happening with the music industry, with, of
Yeah.
course, Bad Bunny.
Bad
You
Bunny.
have to mention that, and you look at him crossing over to like Happy Gilmore and like him doing his acting thing. And again, he also has his political statements with everything going on with the world. So I think there's different bubbles and across the world, but I think one of the things you can't argue is that the Latin audience is there,
It's there.
and I think that's where we go from here is the fun part, right? Because I
Mm,
think I want to be in a position where once the platforms figure out what they want from the Latin audience, we're ready. Like we're ready.
yeah.
We either have the
Mhm.
team, the content, the product, the stories, whatever you want to call it, but we're ready. I think everybody's trying to figure it out in different industry. But I think even though we want to avoid it, I think the Latino audience, it's gonna be it's gonna be like 2.0 of anything that we've ever seen before. Because I think with the
Mm,
power of the internet, it's gonna have so much life. It's gonna do so well in the United States, and maybe it does translate into Mexico, maybe it doesn't, but then it goes down, and it keeps going down into Colombia or Peru or
yeah.
different parts of Latin America. I think we're with the internet, we're gonna be. I mean, again, you look at Bad Bunny, you look at something that once it's a great IP that a lot of people resonate with, you can't put it in a box.
There it is. And with all that, like when you think about Latino content, do you think, especially here, with thinking about here, and let's say for example here in Georgia, right? Like when you're creating Latino content, when you're creating Latino films, do you think they should focus on getting this, like like targeting the Latino audiences, or did you think about targeting the audience in general, the American audience, and with just that Latino whatever twist it has, but without being too like I know every project is different, but I just want to know like from what you've seen, what do you think has worked better?
I think you think about both and you decide. I think that's
Mm,
what's worked better because then you know which lane you're going down. Like for example, a lot of the times I get films that are in Spanish but also in English. That does not
mm,
work. Two language
mm,
films within the same film does not work. I either need a Spanish film or I need an English film because then I can tell you where we're going with the film. If you
mm,
have two languages in it, what's your audience? I think you should decide that as a creator, right? Because I think it's very easy to get put in a box. And if they're, again, at the end of the day, once you get to a platform, you're going to be in a genre, right? So are you going to be Latino action or are you going to be action?
mm. And that's where it gets gotcha. Yeah.
So think about that from the very beginning, because then you're not surprised when people don't understand your product, right? You're like, no, I chose this path. I wanted to go for action and I'm okay with it. Or I wanted to go for Latino action and
Mm,
I'm okay with it, right? But you have these conversations with yourself beforehand, right? Because I
mm.
think all of these stories can be told in different ways. I mean, you look at somebody like Gabriel Iglesias, he does such a good job of not being in a box. Yes, he's a comedian, but now he's also an actor. He was Speedy
Yeah.
Gonzalez. You know, you want to do that, I think. I think same thing like Bad Bunny. And let me know if you have some examples. But I think at a
Yeah.
certain
No,
point,
no.
we're always going to be put into a box. So it's your job to break from that box.
And that's a really good conversation that, like you said, you have to have with yourself, and you have to have that. You have to choose it. You have, especially being in this market here in the States. If you're in Mexico, it's different, of course. But if you're here, you have to know who you want to target it for, and you have to decide that. That makes much more sense. Because I've seen that. I've seen people, for example, do one film both in English and Spanish, but at the end of the day, I'm like, what are you gonna do with it? Which version are you even gonna use? Because I've seen that I like literally shoot the whole movie in both languages, and I guess they still don't know what they want to do with it, and that's why they did it. But again, I think this conversations you have before, then.
Yeah, because again, as a distributor, I want to know what I'm getting into.
Mm,
I can tell you right now that if I pitch a film that's both in Spanish or English, they're gonna ask me, so is it in Spanish or English? Like they make
yeah.
me pick one. When I put the film into the metadata block for a platform, or when I'm pitching to a person, I have to decide. So why don't you decide from the
Mm,
beginning so that we can just, keep going down that path?
it makes sense. And Michael, from your perspective, talking about this, uh, what kinds of Latino stories or themes are connecting right now with the audiences from what you've seen?
I think we're in a weird area, right? I think everything is new right now. I think old is hot again, right? Like because
Mm,
nothing makes sense, nostalgia sells the best. I think new content is very hard to sell right now. Um, as you want to define it as Latino as a whole, telenovelas. Telenovelas are doing great
uh,
because
uh,
they can just keep playing in the background. From I was taught that when times are tough, you lean on personalities, you
mm,
lean on sports, and you lean on religion. Those three things are never going to go out of business, and I think we're seeing that right now. Platforms are focused on NFL rights because the NFL just came back, college football at the World Cup, big elephant in the
hmm
room, and a lot of these platforms are asking themselves, how do I keep the audience here after the soccer game is over?
uh, yeah.
So
Even
nostalgia
yeah,
sells right now.
nostalgia. And you said, I think reality shows are something that I
Yeah,
keep seeing a lot. It doesn't stop. People love
Love
people love
Island.
that. Yeah, yeah.
So we can talk about that. I mean, they did from a distribution point. I think Love Island is doing such a good job, man. I think the fact that they can ping you and you get to see the show early if you're a Prime subscriber, and if not, you get to see it late with
I
everybody.
didn't know
And then
that.
if
That's crazy.
you look at the app, if you can watch it either with ads or without ads, depending on your subscription model that you have. And then people are like live tweeting and doing TikToks and talking about social media. Again, that works.
Yeah,
if you're doing a reality TV show, there's no way you don't look at I Love Island and like, hey, what are you guys doing, and how could I do a version of that? They do
exactly.
podcasts again, like the
They're
cast would go
expanding
on
their
different.
universe, talking about the marketing and expanding their universe. That's their IP, like you said, and they're that's a smart way. I see it also with Survivor. Survivor has Survivor Australia, USA, everywhere. They're everywhere. They just did like a world thing versus the world thing right now, and the Traders that is recently it's basically new here in the States, but it's already with 4 seasons. They're everywhere. It's an IP that's not going down yet.
Another great example, and this is, I kind of spent a whole day in this. WWE. WWE did a great job, I would say, signing with Netflix. I think they did a
Mm,
better job bringing streamers to their show to promote that they
wow.
signed with Netflix. I think they even did a better job giving away free content on YouTube to get people like free old fights, like old IP that they no longer use and was just sitting in the shelf. They have it for free on YouTube, and you can go and watch the fight or the documentary, and it's all different marketing points, so you can go back and watch WWE.
Wow. Wow. Those are the things that you need to think about when you do a new project, and you got to see what's out there. You got to see what's in need. But and again, take this as examples. Take the watch the content, watch what they're doing, right? Like see how they're getting into their audiences, and I think you'll have a better understanding of where your project will fit in as well.
Yes.
But it's this world of distribution. It's just a whole world. And I love that we're having this conversation because I've already had these conversations with filmmakers who don't know what's happening, who doesn't know how do I get my film out there, because they're only thinking about festivals, right? As an independent filmmaker, you think about festivals, but you have to think about what happens after the festival, or what's my takeaway from a festival. So yeah, this is very important stuff for people to really dig themselves into.
Yeah, these are, from my thoughts, these are a lot of thoughts that I have all the time. But I think at the end of the day, these are good conversations. I'm not saying I have the
Mhm.
answers, because every one size does not fit all, right? You have to find your lane, your niche. But the reward of thinking about these things is a lot more useful,
Mm.
than not thinking about them.
And not thinking about it. And that's a very important thing. Uh Marco, before we wrap up this amazing conversation, and we can be here 3 hours talking about this. We can be a whole day, because I think this is an important conversation. We're gonna go to something I love to do in the show, which is the trivia part. We have a trivia part where I'm gonna give you 5 categories to choose from,
Oof,
and I'm just gonna ask you 3 questions about that from that category. They're all Latino related, so we're gonna test your Latino knowledge here.
that's gonna be tough. I know what I know. I don't know what I don't know. So let's see. What are the categories?
So the categories are Latin music. We
Okay.
got food. We got Latin artists. We got culture, and we have a section of did I tell you culture, Latin music, artists, and what was the other one? What did I tell you? Okay, let me go back again. Latin music, food, culture. There it is. Culture, artist, or guess the song. There it is.
I for sure want food and culture, and then you pick the third one.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna start with food.
All right,
Okay,
let's do it.
this is easy. Which country is known for pupusas? Okay, I'm gonna give you 3 options. Which country is known for
Oh,
pupusas? I'll give
okay.
you the options. Colombia, Venezuela, or El Salvador.
None of my countries. So I'm gonna go with.
Pupusas, Colombia, Venezuela, or El Salvador.
I'm gonna go with El Salvador.
Yeah, you got it right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I
You
was just
see?
thinking, like, yeah, there's in Buford Highway, un restaurante. There's a lot of Guatemalan people, and the pupusas are really good. So I was
And the
like, is it
pupusas are so
Guatemalan?
good.
So I'm like, oh, yeah, El Salvador.
El
Great,
Salvador,
amazing.
you got it. Uh, Okay, this one.
Culture.
The culture, yes. This is easy. What is the capital of Argentina?
Buenos Aires. I have to say it
Yeah,
like
there
that.
it is.
That's how
There
they
it
say it
is.
on every call that I'm in.
Buenos
Pero el
Aires.
acento es tan diferente. He
Buenos.
tenido llamadas con ellos, and the accent is so different in Latin America from each country.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then they have the show, show. Oye, boludo, ¿qué
Yeah.
está pasando?
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask the third one from culture because I know you felt comfortable in that one.
No, no, let's do the hard one.
You want another one? You want
I
another
wanna
one?
be wrong. Yeah. No, no, let's do
There
one
it
of the
is.
hard ones.
Okay, I am gonna ask you to. Okay, we are gonna go with the Latin music. Okay,
Oof.
who sang the 19th the 90s hit Bailamos?
I have a thought. Is there
Who
options?
sang? Who?
Is there options? Are you gonna go A, B, and C,
Uh,
or do I have to know it?
I was not gonna give you an option, but I'll give you an option. It's in the 90s, a song called Bailamos. It's either Mark Anthony, it's either Jose Feliciano or Enrique Iglesias. Mark Anthony, Jose Feliciano, or Enrique Iglesias.
I'm gonna go with Enrique Iglesias, but that's wrong.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. I was thinking. I think I'm old because I think that's the only one that I know. I was like, "Bailamos." I was hearing it in my song and everything in my head.
You were hearing it. You were hearing it. I know. I see it. I love that. Well, Marco, gracias again for this amazing conversation. This has been, great stuff for filmmakers out there and people who are starting, to work on their projects, or people who are in the process of, or of getting their projects out. Uh, Looking ahead, Marco, what excites you the most about the future of Lumexx Media and the projects you're working with?
I think this, right? I think to give you some flowers, I think having these conversations, I think the fact that we're in Atlanta, Georgia, we are Yollywood, if we want to call that.
Mm,
But what does that mean for Latinos? I mean, there's a lot of us here, and I think we can be the infrastructure is there, and it doesn't mean that it can't be Latino, right?
mm,
Productions, distribution, all of these conversations that, I would argue that whenever a market gets tough, Latinos show up and they show you a direction. So I think it gets very fun, and we can have this conversation and continue to grow, continue to help each other, continue to have these conversations. And then create that little bit of luck. Be ready for
mm,
that opportunity. I think for Lumexx, we just want to be, like I said, ahead if we can, but at the minimum in the room. I think distribution as a whole is changing. I think the slogan for Lumexx is illuminate your independent journey. But then a
mm.
little bit more of my slogan would be volatility breeds possibility. And I think that's very
Wow,
direct,
wow.
but I think we're currently nothing makes sense from a human level. There's a lot going on that walking around eggshells that our people are hurting, and there's going to be a lot of stories that come out of this. So I think
Mm,
having this space, having these conversations, I know that I wouldn't be here without a lot of the local support that I'm having, but also international support that we're seeing. And I think that our biggest asset is where we are, and then what we can do with where we are, the
mm.
community that we have, the community that we build, the conversations that we have, the conversations that we don't have. I think all of this is going to get amplified with the internet, and I think it's going to be a lot harder to ignore our voices.
Mm. Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because you mentioned also Atlanta. You were very specific, because I think, I've been in Atlanta for 3 years, but if there's something that I've seen here, is that there's talent and there's people that have knowledge for so many different things. And I think it's time for us to really get together and start doing our projects, and know that there is someone like you out there that is, that the whole goal is to highlight our voices. So, but to get to you, we have to create authentic stories. We have to create really good projects in order to get it out there. But I think it's possible. I think we also need to understand that we can do it. And that this is our moment, but we need to unite. We need to get together and do it. There's no other way, because if we're waiting for these big studios to create our projects, our stories, we're sitting down and waiting for it's a gamble, right? But I think it's on us. I think if we're here, if we know the right people, we just need to go ahead and do it, and know that there's people like you out there that are willing to to show us the way, or and give us that door, right? Which is the hardest thing as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I know hustle has a bad connotation to it, but I think we're in the world of you got to do it all. You got to do it all. You got to do it
Yeah.
with your people. And here's the dirty secret: you kind of figure it out on your way there, right? But if you
Mm.
stop and you don't do anything, you're never gonna figure it out. You have to keep going, look at every opportunity, take every opportunity, and before you know it, you'll be like 10 steps ahead somebody else.
Exactly, and that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it, Marco. Marco, if somebody wants to have a conversation with you about the film, about the distribution, where can they find you? How can they get to you?
To me directly, LinkedIn, Marco Medina. To my team, you can always fill out a form on our website, lumexmedia.com. And there's a little contact us form. You can fill out your information, give us a little bit more about your project, see we can schedule a one-on-one, and just, let the team look at a little bit more information. But me directly, LinkedIn is always great. Happy to have a conversation over there. Need to get better at responding to people, but I think it's always a great time to talk to everybody.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Marco, and thank you again for being on this call, having this amazing conversation, and talking about something that's very important, and something that's sometimes people don't even know what it is, right? And how to even get in there. So thank you for sharing your experience, sharing your knowledge, and I cannot wait to see more of Lumexx and what you guys are doing. Let's keep supporting Latino businesses and Latino content, like with like what you're doing. So I think it's very important to know that there's people and companies like you who are doing the work, that we're not alone. So that's really gratifying to hear, right? That you are there. We do the project, and you're there to help us. What's next? So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Also, like, to talk about everything distribution. This was an amazing experience, Marco. Thank you for having this conversation.
No, thank you. I think it was a good conversation. And if anybody has any questions, we'll be happy to do another one.
Yes, love that. So I always like to end the podcast with this phrase that it says, "When life knocks you down, levántate con más fuerza, keep fighting." And that's what we have to do. That's what we have to do as Latinos. That's what we have to do as creators. Always keep thriving. There's no other way. We got this.
We do got this.
We got this. So everyone, thank you for listening to the podcast, Lights Camera Latino with Marco Medina. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms as Lights Camera Latino, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice one.